Good morning. Welcome to the candidate forum sponsored by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. This is our 5th consecutive forum that we've held here in the City Council chambers in Evanston, Illinois. We hold this as a service to our community and in order to inform all of our citizens about the issues that are important for them and important for us in selecting candidates to represent us at the various school boards we have in our community. The NAACP is the nation's oldest and largest civil rights organization. We like to say we're the oldest and boldest, most revered and most feared civil rights organization in the world. And I think that is true. So I want to welcome all of you to this forum this morning. And at this point, I'd like to have our Chair of the Education Committee, Ms. Terry Shepard. Please come.
Thank you, George. Good morning, everyone. As George said, I am the Chair of the Education Committee, and this is our 5th consecutive candidate forum. I'd like to welcome you all here, as well as all the members of the audience. I'd like to very briefly go over our duties so you can understand our charge and maybe help you understand why we're asking some of the questions we are. But the Committee on Education shall seek to eliminate segregation and other discriminatory practices in public education, study local educational conditions affecting minority groups, investigate the public school system and school zoning, familiarize ourselves with textbook material there from which is racially derogatory. That didn't quite make sense, but I hope you understood what it was. We're looking for bad stuff in the textbooks. We're going to seek to stimulate school attendance, keep informed of school conditions, and strive to correct abuses if found, investigate the effects of standardized high-stakes testing, teacher certification, promote parental involvement in education, and aim to be the center of popular education on the race question and on the work of the association. With that, I'll turn the mic over to our moderator, Karen Chavers.
Thank you, Terry. Good morning. I'm Karen Chavers, and it's my pleasure this morning to moderate this esteemed panel. I'd like to begin by introducing our candidates. To my right and your left, District 65 candidate Keith Terry, J.B. Reese. You can raise your hand or say something. Thank you. Richard Rickus, Eileen Buddy, and Katie Bailey. To my left and your right, District 202 candidates Scott Rochelle, Mark Metz, Jane Colleton, and Jonathan Baum. Welcome again this morning to the NAACP 5th Candidates Forum. Really, really important. Great to have you here in the audience, but for our viewing audience and for those people who have cell phones, please turn them to silence. But you can always text, and you might text family members and friends and your neighbors that we're coming live on cable, Channel 19, District 65's Education Channel, and Channel 16. Also want to take this opportunity to thank again the NAACP for this important opportunity to hear from our candidates before we go to the polls. George Mitchell, President of the NAACP, Evanston North Shore Chapter, and the Education Committee that put together this morning, Terry Shepard, Chair, that you heard from, Judith Green. Judith, are you in the room? If you could just... I'm sorry? Judith Treadway and Susan Green. I was going to get you mixed up there. Miss Treadway, say hello. Susan Green, with an E. And Mr. Shepard. Mr. Shepard, would you like to stand? Because you're our timekeeper. So everyone can see you. So the rules are this morning, candidates, and so our viewing audience and our listening audience here. The forum will last 2 hours. There are no breaks. The restroom facilities are just outside the door here. Each candidate will have an opportunity to respond to every question. We ask that you limit your response to 1 or 2 minutes. Please be mindful that other candidates may wish to respond too. We will not be taking opening statements this morning due to the time period. Our timekeeper, Lloyd Shepard, you met, and he is awesome. He will cut you off, so be cognizant. Take your watches off now, candidates. Each candidate will turn their light. We're sitting in, I turned the mayor's name tag off, but we each have a light. So when a candidate wants to speak, the candidate turns on his lights. I'll acknowledge that person, and we'll move forward through each question. There are no closing statements either, and there will be questions in general. If any of the audience has questions for these candidates, there are cards on the table when you came in. If you didn't get them, please get them now. I have the pleasure this morning of sitting in one of our two mayor's seats. So the immediate mayor, Elizabeth Tisdale, is probably, along with many of the women in our community, introducing women out walking for our health. And I would be remiss if I didn't introduce, since we're in the Morton Civic Center, the Honorable Lorraine Morton. Madam Mayor, would you stand this morning, please? Thank you so much. Without any further ado, we've had our light check and our mic check, and I talked about lights, but remember, on your mic, you're up, and then when you're done, you're down. If it stays up, we will all hear your comments. I'm going to start with District 65 question after a short introduction. Many leaders in our country believe the most important civil rights issue facing this nation is the education of students of color, and all students. It is within this context that the NAACP Education Committee has developed the questions for you, each of the candidates today. The first question is a District 65 candidates question. District-wide, Evanston has a projected overcrowding space capacity issue across the district. For 40 years, 600 students have been bused involuntarily from the 5th Ward to their attendance area schools: Lincolnwood, Willard, Orrington, and Kingsley. So far, the board's resolution for school improvements has been to spend over $12 million to add 3 classrooms at Dewey and 3 classrooms at Willard, Dewey not being in the attendance area for the 5th Ward. The administration has recommended building a central core school in the 5th Ward on district-owned property with 18 classrooms for under $15 million that would reduce overcrowding at the 5th Ward attendance area schools. Yet the board has deferred the decision to a referendum. Do you support building the central core school in the 5th Ward? If so, why? If not, why not? Lights, candidates. Mr. Terry, then Mr. J.B. Reese, and then Mr. Richard Rikas. Mr. Terry first.
And I have how many minutes to respond to?
Before Mr. Shepard gets you 1 to 2.
Okay. The short answer is absolutely yes. I think that the board should definitely investigate this for a number of reasons. One, you have the student achievement aspect of it, and I think it's fairly clear in the data that neighborhood schools have an impact. If the board is very interested in closing the achievement gap, then this is one area that we should definitely investigate. Now, the question was, do I, as a board member, support that? Absolutely. Under my leadership, I can tell you that I don't believe the board has ever been in a position to pose a question like this to the community. You've heard fractions throughout the city arguing for this for a number of years. And so right now, it is one aspect there's one aspect of moving this forward. I do believe this: we should be careful to make sure that the board and the city can afford to do this. I know I have 60 seconds. So fiscal responsibility is absolutely critical. However, there are concepts that we can put in place that can be very complementary to what we have right now. If you look at student achievement, it is true that African American kids, minority kids have not necessarily an achievement issue, but a readiness issue. And so I would argue that there are things that we can do in the 5th Ward or the Central Core School that are complementary to what we have in place right now. So it is with that I absolutely say that we can investigate this. And in terms of the money, we can be also very creative in our assessment and execution of this.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. Mr. J.B. Reese.
Excuse me, I also support building a school in the Fifth Ward. Looking at the history of it, it is, in one word, kind of heartbreaking. I can understand why in the late 60s that the integration movement to integrate the Evanston schools was a big idea, an important idea. But now 40 years later, the idea of having a neighborhood school back in the Fifth Ward, I think a time has come. Evanston's a unique area, and we forget the fact that by having a school back in the Fifth Ward, we'll have a school that's predominantly African American. But the kids come together in middle school, and then we all come together at the high school, and I think that's an important fact that we have to remember, that the trade-off that we might make on integration on this issue, I think, is more important to have this neighborhood school. And I'd take it a step further. I'd like to see a KIPP school in there. The track record for KIPP schools, I think, is phenomenal. I think the idea that District 65 has attempted to, in many respects, to try to close the gap. They've made some strides. But I think to take this one step further and try something, different, that, will, I think, be a great opportunity. The neighborhood would control the school. It would have, I think, longer lasting effects overall for the kids' education. But I have to agree with Mr. Terry on one of the things he said about the finances of it. Up north, when they did to try to expand New Trier High School, the taxpayers there rejected it out of hand. With the tax pressure that we're getting right now with our citizens, this is the biggest hurdle, and I hope that we can find ways to make it work.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. Mr. Rickus?
Thank you, and I want to thank everybody from the NAACP for having us today. We really appreciate the chance to share some of our views this morning. I am supportive of the idea of neighborhood schools and every neighborhood having their schools. And I think if you look at the City of Evanston wards and you overlay a map of the school dividers, the boundaries, you can actually see that the Fifth Ward has an issue of equity that has been going on for decades that we need to address. And that issue is that they send their kids to about 7 different elementary schools. And most of the wards only send their kids to 3 different schools. That is a very, very serious issue that we have to address. On top of that, we also have the issue of capacity, which we have to look at for the long term. That being said, I have been an advocate of looking at every single solution, because what I think is most important is that when we're done with this process, we actually have a solution that works for the kids. I'm concerned that if we put all of our apples in one basket, that we're going to end up with some challenges getting any one solution implemented. And we have to make sure that the community understands that we have looked in depth and with equal rigor at all reasonable solutions that could address those problems. Achievement is another one of those challenges that we want to make sure is addressed as we look at the options. And contrary to what's been said, if you actually look at some of the data within our district, the children in Oakton who go to a neighborhood school don't perform as well as some of the kids who actually go to other schools. And so there might be an assumption that neighborhood schools are better for achievement, but the data doesn't actually show that. So I think we have to be very careful when we look at the solution that is going to address equity, capacity, and achievement.
Thank you, Mr. Rickus. Ms. Buddy.
I too value neighborhood schools. I think there is social capital that is built when you know your neighbors, and that happens largely through knowing the children knowing each other and the parents get to know each other. So I totally get why that is something the neighborhood might want. A crucial question I am hoping to find out the answer to by following the proceedings of the new school committee. I'm hoping to hear what the families in the Fifth Ward want. I don't think I've heard that yet. So I am, holding my decision on what I think should happen to hear what those families want for their children. The tax burden that would be increased on them as well as on the rest of the district if we did build the new school. I know that one governance option that's been brought up is the charter school option. I've been doing some reading. I've read Diane Ravitch's latest book on various things, testing, school governance, and I know that charter schools, they show mixed results. So I find the KIPP school idea intriguing, but I think that Ms. Ravitch, who is a pretty well-known educational historian, she has come to the conclusions that the districts that are in desperate shape can benefit from charter schools, but I don't get the sense that our district needs a charter school, and I don't think we can conclude that it's going to be necessarily better than our standard model that we would use. So I too am for looking at all reasonable options, and I'm very eager to hear what the committee finds out in the next few months.
Thank you, Ms. Buddy. Katie Bailey.
I'm trying to figure out how to get this answer down to 1 or 2 minutes. I want to start by saying I sat here 4 years ago and answered that question about this. And I remember what stood out to me is what was said at the beginning, that kids on one street corner can go to 5 or 6 different schools. And if you don't think that impacts a community, you just need to go to a community where everybody's walking. And I think it impacts the families, I think it impacts the community, and I think it impacts achievement. Maybe not right at that point in time, but I wonder about later on. I think we need to look at achievement, not just how they're doing now, but how kids are doing in high school graduation rates, and look at it tracked over time. That said, I'm chairing the committee with Mr. Summers, the new school committee. I wouldn't have stepped forward to chair it if I didn't think that we needed to look at this. I encourage everybody to get involved in this process. Our committee meetings are all open. We have one next Thursday at 7 p.m., and they move around the city. We're charged with determining the feasibility of a new school. And that feasibility is looking both at need, by space demand, achievement, and community interest and support. We're also a committee that's well represented across Evanston, people who have young kids in the school system and people who have been out of the school system, people in the Fifth Ward and people outside the Fifth Ward. And our objective is to look at all aspects of it. What's needed, what's important to the community, what's supported by the community, what space demands are out there, what the governance options we look at, and what financing options we're looking at. And I think it's really important that we do our due diligence and we do it right. We understand that, I think somebody just said it, that we need to really address what has been happening in this community over the last 30 years. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. You just made it. No rebuttal. Sorry. Don't have time. So if everybody else didn't hear that on the panel, there will be no time for rebuttal. Okay? Thank you. If you're just tuning in, you're tuning into the NAACP 5th Candidates Forum. We've just heard from District 65 candidates. I want to acknowledge again that the Education Committee of the NAACP, led by President George Mitchell, brings you this forum this morning. Terry Shepard, Chair, Judith Treadway, Susan Green, and Lloyd Shepard, members of the Education Committee. We're going to move to my left, your right, District 202 candidates. Scott Rochelle, Mark Metz, Jane Colleton, and Jonathan Baum. This is a two-part question. The first will be for incumbents, and the second for the new folks. The Pacific Education Group has conducted race-conscious discussions with the board, administration, all staff, and eventually with students to improve the culture at ETHS, to better serve all students and eliminate the marginalization of students of color. This will be for the incumbent candidates. The A question is, what benefits do you incumbent board members believe this program has had? What lessons have you learned? And what advice can you give to District 65 as they contemplate a similar program? Lights, please.
Sure.
Okay. You're first.
I want to correct a little part of the question. We have not trained all our teachers. We've just We've trained less than half, but we have begun that process. That doesn't eat into my time.
Thank you, Ms. Colleton. It does not. Does a timekeeper, that does not eat into her time. That was a clarification. Am I correct? Both the chair and the timekeeper agree. Ms. Colleton, your time starts now.
The board has worked with Pacific Education Group for more than 2 years, and it has taken much of that time to really understand what they brought to the table and to understand how this effort impacts Evanston Township High School. I think that one question we had recently was, are you doing this in secret? No, we're not doing it in secret. We post it. However, conversations about race are very complicated and very difficult and very personal. And so that's from my perspective as a board member, that's one of the great things that Pacific Education Group has given us, is the opportunity to better understand the implications, the effect, the influence of race, just as board members, and certainly in the institution of Evanston Township High School. The benefits are huge, I think, personally, professionally, and politically in terms of the impact it has on students at ETHS. I think we all grow when we better understand the other, someone who's not ourselves, and that certainly has happened. Teachers, in particular, I said this the other night, when the door closes of the classroom, it's between the teacher and the students. And if teachers bring high expectations to students, it can be nothing but a winner. And the expectations drive much of what happens in the classroom. If teachers have expectations that this is a low-performing student, consciously or unconsciously, they behave accordingly. And that training with PEG is going to help teachers be able to better serve students by really understanding themselves and understanding the cultural capital that each child brings to the classroom.
Thank you, Ms. Colleton. Mr. Metz, before you answer the question, I just happened to look down. Is that a baseball jacket you have on?
It's opening day, and I'm a coach on the high school baseball staff.
I just wondered. I also saw that cap, so I was curious.
I debated long and hard over what to wear, but it's opening day.
Mr. Timekeeper.
I won't say that I'd rather be there than here.
And Mr. Timekeeper, that does not eat into his time. Mr. Metz, would you like to answer the question?
Thank you. I'm going to try real hard to use no baseball metaphors today. I can't always do that. But anyway, the Pacific Educational Group, I think, I want to speak to this from two perspectives. One, sort of how I see it affecting our institution, and then a little bit about how it's affected me personally. First, about the institution, I want to be clear that there's a buzz on the street out there that somehow the Pacific Educational Group is setting the agenda for the board and influencing the board in terms of policy and trying to influence the board to make everything all about race and all that. And I want to be very clear that that is not the case. The work we're doing with the Pacific Educational Group is to help the board and then all of our teachers and virtually everybody in our building, and hopefully then later in the community as we spread this, to really understand the perspective of people that don't look like them. And that's a huge undertaking. It's so difficult for teachers, administrators, board members, and everybody else to understand the perspective of kids of a different race when they come into our building. And if we're going to effectively educate them and really meet them where they are, then we've got to understand the perspective that they bring when they come. And that's really the work of the Pacific Educational Group, is to help us learn listening skills and learn skills to appreciate perspectives of other people. And that's really all it is. And the reason we isolate race is because it's not the only issue, but it's the hardest one. And if we can make a lot of headway with that, then dealing with things like gender and socioeconomic issues and all the rest, other issues that affect education, that's going to be a little easier, and we can use some of those same techniques. For me, it's been an amazing learning experience, an amazing growth experience, and I think they've done good work for us.
Thank you, Mr. Metz. Sorry about that. I'd like to acknowledge Second Ward Alderman Peter Braithwaite. Would you like to say hello? I think I also saw Bonnie Lockhart, District 65 School Board member. Good morning. And I believe I saw my boss, and you're a Cook County Commissioner, Larry Sufferton. Good morning. Good morning. I'm sorry, Mary Wilkerson. Hi, Mary. Good morning. Good morning. Again, if you're just tuning in, the NAACP Candidates Forum, and we're just about to have Part B of a two-part question for District 202 candidates. I'm going to repeat the question again since we had two lengthy, right down to the wire answers. The Pacific Education Group has conducted race-conscious discussions with the board, administration, all staff, and eventually with students to improve the culture at ETHS, to better serve all students and eliminate the marginalization of students of color. Lights, gentlemen. Okay.
You said there was going to be a different question.
Wait, I'm going. And to the prospective new 202 board members, do you support the continuation of race-conscious discussions to eliminate the marginalization of students of color? Why or why not? Okay, Scott Rochelle, I saw your light first. I was trying to give you guys a heads up.
Well, first and foremost, Evanston, with its diversity, needs this sort of communication with professionals who can assist our leaders, our administrators, our teachers for dealing with such a diverse group of students, not just racial diversity, but the diversity with their backgrounds and their learning abilities. So I'll start by saying that one thing I think moving forward we need to do a better job of is actually communicating what this group is doing. I think there's such a big blow up in the community about what PEG is doing in the school. If we as a board could communicate exactly what PEG is doing, what is the benefit to the student, because those who are sending their students to Evanston High School are expecting their those in the community are expecting their children to receive a great education. Now, we need to be able to communicate how PEG is helping their education, because moving forward, if people don't understand that, they're going to be upset. Is it helping in academic fashion? People want to know that. We need to communicate that. So yes, I do believe this is important. Moving forward, we need to communicate what the benefit is, because when people understand what the benefit is, then they can actually come to the table and give their objections or their support. But right now, we don't have that yet, because people don't really know what's going on. I've researched PEG, and I myself would like to know how this is affecting our students.
Thank you, Mr. Rochelle. Mr. Baum.
I would like to see broader cultural change. I actually have some experience in changing the culture of an institution. 17 years ago, when I became the first full-time director of our law firm, we ranked 87 out of the 100 largest firms in the country in pro bono service. And in the last 10 years, we've won dozens of awards for our pro bono service. So what did I learn in trying to change the culture there? A couple of things. One is I learned that you can't go in and try to beat people up and tell them, I couldn't go in and say, what's the matter with you? Don't you care about poor people? Why don't you do more pro bono work? I had to reach in and find the goodness inside of them. The second thing I learned is that I couldn't categorize people and make assumptions based on categories. I couldn't say, this is what corporate lawyers like, or this is what women lawyers are like, or this is what young lawyers are like. And I think I'd like to bring that to ETHS in the sense that we do need to meet every student where they are. But every student is a complex of characteristics. I'd like to reach and meet every student with taking into account their race, their economic circumstance, their abilities, their disabilities, their hopes, their dreams. I really would like to see broader cultural change that helps us reach every student as an individual with all the multiple characteristics that make them up.
Thank you, Mr. Baum. I'd like to take a minute to recognize 202 board members Martha Burns, if you'll say good morning, and Rachel Heyman. Ms. Burns, where are you? Right here. Okay. Ms. Heyman? Oh, back there. Okay. Good morning. Good morning. The next questions are for both candidates from District 65 and 202. What instructional initiatives would you advocate for as a board member to continue to reduce the academic achievement gap? That was Mr. Metz.
Well, I think our board has already taken a big step in addressing the so-called achievement gap, what I tend to prefer to refer to as the predictability of achievement according to race. And that's something that the board is very serious about working on and eliminating. And this recent change we made to the freshman humanities curriculum, I think, is an important step. The data is clear. Our conclusions, I believe, are incontrovertible. The action we took, of course, is subject to debate, and many people in the community have different opinions on that. But what this is about is a whole big group of kids in the middle who are not achieving at their full potential and have not for many, many years at Evanston Township High School. Now, when you lay over that the racial breakdown, we see that those kids are disproportionately children of color. And this program is designed to raise expectations, provide supports, and relentlessly pursue higher performance on the part of all children, including children of color. And that's what that program is about, and I think it's an important step.
Thank you. Ms. Bailey?
Research shows that only about 50% of the achievement gap is explained at all by economics, and we do need to look at economics, but that's not all. So part of it is fighting for things like the poverty grant, but once you get rid of the economics, we still have an achievement gap. And you need to look at, as Mr. Metz said, the racial predictability on achievement. Some of the programs that we've done in our district that I really think have been great include instructional leaders, interventionists, homeschool liaisons, extended day, partnering with community organizations such as YOU, and really working on high expectations in what's taught in the classroom. I also believe that we need to look at measurement, and I said this a few minutes ago, but measurement on how kids are doing currently with our programs, and I thought about this with another one of our programs, ACC, how kids are doing in 5th grade, but how are those kids doing in 8th grade, and are those kids more likely to graduate? And that's where I think coordination with 202 is really important, because we need to look at kids across the whole spectrum. But I think our initiatives, including our strategic plan, which talks about the early years, I think Mr. Terry, you said kids coming prepared for school, and then we have in our strategic plan a goal that all kids who've been in school for 4 years are reading at grade level of 3rd grade. And I think those kind of initiatives are going to make a difference, and we need to keep working. Thanks.
Thank you. Eileen Buddy.
I absolutely agree with Katie. We need to keep working on those initiatives that are targeting reading at grade level by 3rd grade. I know we also have an effort to work with the families of the children in the preschool program at the district building, and I applaud that effort. I know it's kind of new, and I think we need to keep pushing on that. I think there's a kind of parent university where they bring parents in to learn what they can do to support literacy at home. And I think maybe we need to work on that kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, maybe more than just preschool. I really, really think we need to work on a literacy strategy that's all-encompassing, that gets the message out to parents how crucial it is to read aloud to children, because we need to have a partnership between parents and the schools, and we also need to work harder on partnering with community members who would like to help with this. I know that there are a lot of retired folks that I've heard from at some coffees that would like to come into the schools and read to children, and there's not necessarily an easy avenue for them to do that. So I wonder if we can partner with the city and the city's volunteer coordination effort to get people reading to children so children learn to associate reading with pleasure. I think the district does a good job with fluency intervention, targeted things that teachers are great at, but teachers don't have all the time to sit and read with a child for 20 minutes every day. So I wonder if we can bring in community members who really believe that that's an important contribution to a young child's life.
Thank you, Ms. Buddy. J.B. Rees.
I guess I'd look at some things more structurally. I'd like to increase the school year by, I guess, still 180 days. Right now we're at 176, which is the, I think, the minimum of school days that we have. I'd also like to increase the school day for at least another 40 minutes. Because I think keeping kids in classroom longer and keeping them in the school year longer, I think will also have a benefit for all the kids, especially the kids that are not meeting the standards. I'm also excited about this Common Core standards that the district is going to adopt. It is, from my understanding, it's based on the work, or has been influenced by the work by Jill and by Edie Hirsch, who believes in kind of a cultural literacy, that Common Core knowledge that all children should know to be able to navigate us through our democracy in our country. So I'm excited about that. I think it'll bring more rigor. But with high expectations, I think also sometimes comes no excuses. The greatest organization that brings people from all different backgrounds and brings them through and promotes them is our U.S. military. They have a high standard. They give the resources to everyone, regardless of their background, and said, here's where you got to go. We'll give you the tools to do that. And just on a quick note, when I say like high standards, if you look at the Battle of the Books, and I can't remember the book, we have a graphic novel in there. Of all the great books that fourth graders should read, graphic novels should be part of that group. So when we talk about high expectations, we need to do that. We need to give children tougher work, I think more homework, more rigor, and I think that's the best way to elevate all boats.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rees. Jane Colleton.
Thank you. Academic changes that are supporting the work of equity are strong now. We're looking at SOS, which is the support service that's available for kids in the morning. That was a program that was initiated by teachers because they really they couldn't do everything in the classroom. They wanted opportunities to work with kids in the morning, and we have a brisk business with SOS in the morning, as well as study centers in the afternoon with teachers available. The PLCs, which are the teachers have them on periodically, and that's another professional development work that teachers are doing. We're looking at rigor, and part of the rigor we're looking at is going to come through the Common Core standards work that we're doing, and it's rigor that we want to see applied across the board, not just with high achieving kids, but with kids who are in lower levels in the regular ed. Actually, we want to see a stronger emphasis on college and career readiness, which really is about having kids ready to be flexible, not necessarily ready to go to college, but ready to learn when they finish, ready to continue learning when they finish at Evanston Township High School. So whether they're in a college classroom or whether in a further work training environment, they have the skills to keep learning at a high level. It's pretty exciting, I would say.
Thank you, Ms. Colleton. Jonathan Baum.
Well, I support a number of things that others have suggested, but in addition, I think we need to study what works and replicate it. One of the things that often gets overlooked is that we have many students of color who are outstanding in their academic achievement, and I think we need to talk to them and to their teachers and to their families about what helped them to get to where they were, and we need to replicate that. Same thing with our fellow school districts in the Minority Student Achievement Network. See what works and replicate it. Second thing is that I think we can't just focus on instruction or even support. We have to talk about guidance, about nurturing. We need to, a lot of the research shows that a key to breaking down the achievement gap is building relationships, and at all levels. But most acutely aware of the high school, we have to build stronger relationships with our students. We need more adult mentorship to guide them through the maze of opportunities that we provide them. And then finally, people have almost gotten sick to death of hearing me talk about building a seamless educational continuum between District 65 and 202. That's absolutely essential to this task. I mean, the honest truth is that we will never close the achievement gap at ETHS without the firm cooperation of District 65. It's just not going to happen. And that seamless connection is absolutely essential if we're going to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. Scott Rochelle.
Well, we've spoken about curriculum. Curriculum alone will not close the achievement gap. It takes so much more than just a curriculum. More rigorous work, more homework, that's not going to close the gap. We have to be able to teach students how to attack a curriculum, to value a curriculum. 1 + 1 is always going to be 2. Romeo and Juliet are always going to be star-crossed lovers. Some students understand that and they know how to attack that. They want to learn more. Some students aren't doing that. We will close the gap by helping reach those students who are not seeing that value. More homework's not going to do it. It goes way deeper than that. A student needs to walk into a classroom and say, I want to learn more. I see this teacher here who wants to teach me. This teacher expects me to do well. I want to do well because this teacher expects me to do well. If a student's not getting it at home, we need to provide that here at Evanston High School. If no one else expects a student to do well, that teacher should. If that's the first place that student gets some support and some expectation, I'm okay with that. But at least they're getting it. So that's my first point on closing the gap. And those are my thoughts on that. We need to research ways. I think Jonathan Baum said something very profound. We have African American students who do well at school. And you can ask the question, what works for them? I'll tell you what works for them. Support. They have parents at home who are giving them the support they need. We can't go into their home. We can provide a school that gives them support that they're not getting at home. That is where we start. That's going to close the gap. More homework, more rigorous curriculum. That's a start. It's a step in the right direction. We have a duty to do more.
Thank you, Mr. Rochelle. Richard Rickus. Richard Rickus.
Yes, I think that we need to base any choices that we make on best practices and some of the most innovative techniques that are available today. And I would look to Dr. Robert Ferguson, who's an African-American professor who is a founder of the Harvard University Achievement Gap Institute. And over his decades of research, he has made a lot of conclusions. A couple of them include the following. One is that we really need to dispel myths about African-American children in the classroom. And an example of that is that some children may have adequate skills to complete their homework, and some African-American students don't have the same skill set. And so even when they work, according to his research, for equal amounts of time at home, a lot of African-American children may arrive at the classroom not having completed their work. And so teachers often think they're lazy. And so there needs to be some education about some of the differences in skills that children bring to the classroom they have at home. The second issue that he talks about is extending the educational experience. And I think it goes, according to his research, beyond simply extending the school day or school year, but it's actually deepening their experience. One thing that we do really well in District 65 is we have childcare. And actually at Dawes, you can see the positive academic impact on the children who participate in our childcare program. It's extending the educational experience. We need to make sure that we have enough resources for children with IEPs, which are children who have special needs. Those children are much larger in terms of their African American representation. We need to partner with community organizations. I have a relationship with the Dean of the School of Education and Social Policy at Northwestern, and they're willing to sit down with us and look at how we build off of their experience in urban settings to make sure that we're really creating an extended and deeper educational experience to help close the achievement gap. So I think there are a lot of things we can learn from experts around us.
Thank you, Mr. Rickus. Keith Terry, please.
Let me just start by saying we have to stay the course in respects. I'm very proud of what has happened over the course of the years in District 65. And let me just lay the facts for a second. The question was in terms of closing the achievement gap. If you look at the reality on the ground, there has been shift and a closure in the achievement gap. There has been. So the first point, we have to acknowledge that. The second point, I would say, it's not enough. We've got to work harder, and that's a fact. Two, so what would I do? What we did a few years ago was we laid down a strategic plan that looked at so many aspects of the education initiative within District 65. Far-reaching, visionary, and we have to have the courage to execute on that. And the biggest danger in this city is not executing on the strategic plan because it did a lot. With 60 seconds, let me just keep going. Well, with respect to because the strategic plan talked about a readiness gap. If we really want to hit the ball out of the park, kids need to be ready by the 4th grade, number one. Number two is new concepts. In District 65, we've played with different concepts. And so what I would say, ACC was one. If it's working, expand it. PEG, the Pacific Educational Group, cultural change has an impact. We should have the courage of talking about those things that absolutely work. And lastly, I would say two things. One, make it a board goal. Without a doubt, make it a board goal. We have a student achievement goal, make it a board goal. And it is, but a specific board goal. The other one is we need to partner with social programs. I was a part of Family Your Future, which tried to deal with these things from a wide social perspective, because the equation for education and achievement is more than the teacher, the principal, the board. It includes the mom, the dad, the parents, the social network. It takes a community to raise a child, and I have to stop.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. Just a reminder that early voting has begun, folks, and will be available to you until Thursday, March 31st. You can early vote here at the Morton Civic Center from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And for our Skokie audience, the Skokie Village Hall, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday as well. So just wanted to give that little reminder. The next question is for both 65 and 202 candidates as well. And the question is, considering the heightened interest in college readiness, do you believe one joint school board meeting per year is enough? Why or why not? What would you suggest as the agenda? I recognize Mr. Rochelle and then Mr. Terry.
No, it's not enough. It isn't. You know, we talk about seamless education. We talk about working together. Evanston's one community with 2 districts. There's no reason why we should operate as 2 districts. There needs to be more collaboration. The students who are coming from the District 65 are going to come to Evanston. Let's operate as such. You know, it's not noodles. It's happening for a long time. Let's get together. Let's work together to make sure our students are best served. I can go on and on about this, and I think everyone else is probably going to go on and on about this, but you know, it just makes logical sense for us to work together. One meeting, 6 to 8 meetings, whatever works for our students. You know, it can't hurt. It can only help, and to me, this makes logical sense.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rochelle. Mr. Terry.
The short answer is yes. I think the boards should get together. I would recommend and suggest 3 times a year. And in terms of the agenda, it should be a little bit more far-reaching than a feel-good agenda. I mean, we have some big issues that we're trying to deal with. Now, I step back from that as a current board member and as the board president and tell you that, we have a big task before us in this city. And I come to this and humbly knowing that in 65, there's a lot of noise and a lot of clamor for change and a demand by the public that we do so much to improve the education initiative. The reason that I think we need to work with 202 is that, in my opinion, and I'm speaking from the heart right now, is that for such a long period of time, Evanston High School was a school of 2 schools. And we could stop there. And not ETHS, but in District 65, we have 16 different schools, and we have to deal with some real substantive issues. Now that ETHS is making some shifts, then I think we definitely need to partner together and communicate, because from K through 12, the college readiness and career readiness initiative is here, and there's great expectations for both boards to perform. There should be no clamor. There should be no arguments. We should all work together to improve the initiative of every child. And the last thing that I would say is that I would like to see more civility between both districts. That's from superintendents down to the teachers and the students. And we've made some significant progress there. We really have. And so with that, I think that there are a number of things that we can do, because enhanced communication is always a very powerful and positive thing that will improve for everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. Mark Metz and J.B. Reese.
No, thank you. More meetings? Yeah, I think we probably do need more joint meetings, but I think more important would be more committee work and more work between our respective departments, where they really get down into the brass tacks of how we're preparing students and what's going on. And then use board meetings as a means of having our professionals report to both boards the progress that they're making. And that's going to allow the joint boards then to develop goals and objectives and to measure the progress that our administrators are making against those goals and objectives and really begin to make some headway. It is clear that we have an imperative, a mandate from the community to provide the best educational experience we can, K through 12, for our children at Evanston. And it only makes common sense that we need to work together very, very closely to make sure that's happening. So, I'm an advocate of setting the number of board meetings as a result of the need that comes from the work that's going on below that in board committees and in professional cooperation between departments.
Thank you, Mr. Metz. J.B. Reese?
From the beginning of the campaign season, I've been for getting this issue on a referendum. I'd like to see that in 2012. And my reasons are quite simple. I believe in the collective wisdom of the community often more than I do the board. And the reason I say that is I realize that combining these two districts are going to be complicated. You have issues on labor with the teachers. You're going to have issues of just all the different coordinations that go on between melding two districts. But I believe that when you put all this information out to the public, I have faith that our citizens can make the right decision. If it's going to be something that's going to be way too expensive and can't be done, I would trust that these citizens would vote that way. So I would urge the boards to put this on the agenda, set up the committees, study these issues, and then put it out there for the voters to decide, whether it's in 2012 or maybe sometime later. That would be great. I think the advantages of combining the districts outweigh some of these factors that are there as negative factors, and that is the continuity of the educational system, where we can track kids all the way from kindergarten through the 12th grade. I believe what Mr. Baum said, that close any type of racial gap is going to have the coordination between the districts. And if you look at the districts and all the things they have to handle, 65 and 2012, meeting more 2 or 3 times, I don't think it's going to make that much difference. There's so many things they have to do for their own districts that it's going to be tough that a couple of extra meetings here and there is really going to have any, and in my belief, any significant difference. So I would urge the boards to put this on the agenda, vote on it, get the committee started, and let the citizens of Evanston decide.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. Eileen Buddy, followed by Jonathan Bond.
I agree that a joint board effort is necessary to consider consolidation, which is what I think Mr. Reese is talking about, and I don't think that was part of the question, but that's an obvious topic that the two boards need to work together on, and I think a lot of that is going to take committee work. I don't know that public, big meetings are going to be where most of the analysis gets done on whether consolidation makes sense. We have to research what the laws are that would make it so that we wouldn't save money if we consolidated. I know there's possibly a law out there that would automatically allow the lower scale teachers to opt into the upper pay scale, because right now there's a $20,000 difference between the District 65 and District 202 average salaries. So That's a crucial detail that needs to get analyzed before we would put anything on a referendum. And I think that kind of thing has to be done in committee work. And also, I think there needs to be more joint effort in departments, like Mr. Metz said. I think that, for example, the math departments need to work together to ensure that it's a seamless transition from middle school to high school. And I don't know that there is enough articulation going on between departments. So that's something that I think we need to work on the two schools doing better in whether or not we have additional joint board meetings.
Thank you, Ms. Buddy. Jonathan Baum?
Yeah, I think the issue isn't the frequency of the meetings, it's the nature of the work to be done. And what I would like to see the two boards do is to jointly erect a framework for our educational professionals to fill in on how we're going to achieve college and career readiness. And the framework that I would suggest that the two boards work to develop would, first of all, clearly and jointly define what we mean by college and career readiness so that we have a common and clear definition. Second would be to identify the specific assessment tools that we're going to be using at each stage from pre-K through 12 to determine our progress toward the goal. And then finally, I think that the boards should mandate to their educational professionals that they adopt a set of standards where this is where we expect our kids to be in 12th grade, 10th grade, 8th grade, 5th grade, 3rd grade, and so forth. And then we leave it to the educational professionals to develop the specific curriculum, the instructional methods, the support systems, and so forth to carry out the joint board mandate. But I think it's essential that the two boards develop this joint framework for college readiness and then give this to our professionals to carry out.
Thank you, Mr. Baum. Katie Bailey, followed by Richard Rickus.
The question both deals with like an issue of consolidation as well as, to me, the issue of coordination in college and career readiness. And what I see that needs to be done is, regardless whether the district's or not, and I believe we should look at it, we need to continue what I see as a trend towards positive collaboration between the two districts. And when I look at college and career readiness, this is a perfect example. And I think what we could do, and probably similar a little bit to what Mr. Baum said, is I'd like to see a common goal between the two boards on what that means. What does college and career readiness looks like? And I look at this as an example. The Evanston Community Foundation did a study called Educating Success-Ready Students. And they looked at the 30% of students who are not planning to go to college, but they need to be career ready. And those middle-level career-ready skills need post-secondary education. And part of the recommendation was we need to start earlier for career readiness. We need to begin career path lifestyles earlier in middle school and elementary school. They use such examples as career cruising. At our joint board meeting, I think it was Ms. Wilkerson said, we need to see what career planning means. We need to start that earlier. Well, if we don't even know what it means in the middle school and the elementary school, how are we going to get kids on track to be career and college ready? And so what I'd like to see, whether it's more meetings or more subcommittees, is the board to have a common goal.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Richard Rickus?
Thank you. I'm going to break the question down into the college and career readiness and the board collaboration. It is essential that we're really focused on career readiness. It's something that in our family we think about a lot. My husband Carlos and I adopted our son Tyreeth, who happens to be African American. And as we think about the challenges that he's going to have in having access to the same sorts of opportunities that I have had as a white person, we know there will be more challenges. And I want to illustrate that with a research report. The National Bureau of Economic Research did a study with resumes, and they posted resumes in the Chicago Tribune and the Boston Globe. And they took identical resumes, and they had white-sounding names at the top on some resumes and black-sounding names at the top on other resumes. And the resumes with Carrie's and Kristen's at the top had a callback rate of 13%. Keisha got a callback rate of 4%, and Tamika got a callback rate of 5%. So I think one of the realities is that our children who are African American have societal challenges that we have to give them an even greater edge up when they're going out into the world to try and find fair work. So I think that's something we really need to focus on. In terms of the board working together, I'm like Jonathan, it's not about the number of meetings, it's about the nature of the work. I do think we need to very aggressively explore the possibility of a merger. I think when we do that, it has to be about the kids first. So whatever choices we make, there are going to be financial benefits, potentially, maybe operational ones, but is it going to be best for the kids? To me, my gut says it probably would be, but it's something we need to study and make sure that we have a true, seamless K-12 academic experience for all of our families and kids.
Thank you, Mr. Rickus. Jane Colleton.
I like to weigh in as the elder stateswoman. I'm getting elderly though. In my time on the board, we have increased our interaction with District 65. I can remember as a new parent at ETHS, articulation was the buzzword. It continues to be, but I think we're getting better at it. I think the board meetings that we're talking about are useful in terms of public relations, largely because it looks like we're talking to each other, which we are. But it's the substance of the talk, which is why I agree with Mark that the committee work that needs to be done well before we meet as a two boards is essential, and we have to continue doing that. We have to do that in a deep way, and I think the college and career readiness, which is another buzzword, is good fodder for us to meet on, because we do want it to be a good transition. I don't believe in seamlessness, because I think every transition has its bumps. So I don't think we can get away with that from that, but I think we can make it better, and I think articulation between the two districts is absolutely essential, and it's happening, it's getting better, and I think that this is a good, it's good information for Mark and for me to take back, and good information for people who are already on the boards and who will be on the boards to know that the community really believes this is important and that we should be doing it.
Thank you, Ms. Colleton. To our viewing audience, if you're just tuning in, you're lucky. You've reached the NAACP Evanston North Shore Chapter Candidates Forum for candidates for School District 65 and School District 202. To my right and your left, Keith Terry, 202 candidate, J.B. Reese, Richard Rickus, Eileen Buddy, and Katie Bailey. To my left and your right, Scott Rochelle, Mark Metz, these are District 202 candidates, Jane Colleton and Jonathan Baum. Just a few minutes ago, I gave a little commercial break that early voting is available until Thursday, March 31st. You can vote today, folks, either here at the Morton Civic Center or at the Skokie Village Hall, and Monday through Friday thereafter until Thursday, March 31st. So be sure to cast your ballot. The next question is also for both candidates. It is estimated that at least 30% of Evanston parents do not have computers or internet access. How do we propose to remedy this technology divide and more effectively reach these parents in a timely manner? Anybody's light? The digital divide, folks. Okay, Mr. Baum, followed by Ms. Colleton.
Well, I think that this is sort of the classic example of where it takes a village to raise a child. This is not going to happen with families alone, and it's not going to happen with school districts alone. It's going to take us all working together. I've spent the last 20 years or more on the board of YOU, and one of the things that YOU does is to work with kids after school at providing homework centers where there are opportunities, computers, and not only computers, but quiet and safe space in which to do homework. I think that I don't think we can get a computer into every home. I don't think that's realistic, but I think with the cooperation of the school districts, families, and our wonderful volunteer community services organizations that we have here in Evanston, that we can make some progress toward bridging the divide.
Thank you, Mr. Baum. Ms. Colleton.
At Evanston, it's a huge problem, the digital divide, because many of the things that we talk about doing for parents require a computer in order to communicate the information. So we know it's a problem. One of the things we do for kids is we have a computer loaner program, which is always well utilized. And we have access for parents and students in the College and Career Center, where parents can come and help research, help their kids with research. And of course, in our association with Overton Community College, we have opportunities for parents to come and learn how to use a computer. But it's a huge problem because that gap exacerbates or exaggerates the communication issues that we have with parents. We do have a great website at ETHS, but of course people have to have computers in order to use it. And the library has some, but it's a big problem in terms of dealing with any kind of communication today. Computers are getting cheaper, which is great. It's going to be like a microwave oven now. Everybody has a microwave. But that has yet to happen.
Thank you, Ms. Colleton. Ms. Bailey, followed by Ms. Buddy.
I think in District 65 we've done a good job to get access to technology for our children. And the issue has to do more with the home-child connection. And I think this is a real problem because there's a technology divide even when you have a computer at home because your kids are way more literate than you are. So there's both technology education on what kids are learning and how they're using technology and helping parents. And then there's the issue of parents not having access to information that is readily available on very many awesome websites. One of the things that we've talked about, and we need to not just partner with community organizations, but our schools are community, they're community schools. And can we have those open at different hours where those computers are available to families, both for training on how to use the technology that's out there, as well as access. And I think we have board members who always do a good job of saying, you still have to print it and mail it a lot of times, because you just need to get it out there.
Thank you very much. Mr. Terry? I crossed it out already, I'm sorry. I did say Ms. Buddy, excuse me, Ms. Buddy, and then Mr., followed by Mr. Terry, Mr. Metz, and Mr. Rickus. Thank you.
As a PTA president at Nichols, we have tried to improve. This is still an area of opportunity. We still need to do better. I know we did make sure that kids were getting the announcements in school that parents can access, because there's an email blast that goes out, but we got a grant for a flat screen TV in the cafeteria, which blasts the announcements at the kids. Only those. I hope nothing else is going on that flat screen TV during lunchtime. But I think that I agree with Katie that we need to have community resources to do training on computers for parents, because I know my kids are ahead of me and there are things that I would like to know about what they're doing. But it is crucial that we continue printing on paper for the time being and continuously work towards the goal of a paperless system, because that would be the best green thing to do.
Thank you, Ms. Buddy. Mr. Terry?
Thanks for the question. You know, I hear this question and I hear something different. 30% of the parents don't have computers. And I know one of the challenges is how do we increase our communication to early year parents. And so I've been on the board long enough to know that we've done all of the town hall meetings, we've printed, paper and all of that good stuff. But a couple of really interesting things have started to take place in District 65. One, we funded parent, student, family liaisons, something that Ms. Judith Treadway is a part of, and I think that it's unique because it allows for District 65 personnel to communicate with all types of parents, because there are parents who don't necessarily feel empowered to come into the schools, and so we have a number of different initiatives. The other thing that I think that we're doing and perhaps should do is to make sure that we're working with the appropriate libraries, that we're working with the appropriate social agencies, and perhaps loaning computers that were appropriate. But bear in mind that we're talking K through 8 schools, K through 8, and that the need of a child and parent might be a little different. And so the most important thing is making sure that the channel of communication to the parent has increased. And I can tell you, it has been a board priority to increase communication to the families. And so with respect to the computer question, District 65 has been very unique in its purchase of technology. As that technology becomes antiquated, we should perhaps make it available to those families that don't have access to computers so that we can continue to communicate. We can do this, and we just have to have a concerted effort to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. Mr. Metz, followed by Mr. Rickus and Mr. Rochelle.
Thank you. I'm going to divide into really two issues. One is just straight communication with parents. How do we get information in their hands if they don't have computers? And then there's the more complex educational issues that are impacted by the lack of computers in homes. In terms of communication, I mean, we recognize and we talk about all the time that there are many of our families of our students who do not have computers in their homes. So this year through a retirement, we have a new director of communications, a new assistant director of communications, and we've used that as an opportunity to sort of rebuild that office. One of their early charges is figuring out how to better communicate with families. So now, and I'm on the list, now I get robocalls at home, which can be many times one of the most annoying things that happens when the telephone rings. But you know what, when it's the high school call and to tell important information to a family, I find that very reassuring, and I'm glad that those automatic calls are going out to families that impact what we're doing. So that's an important thing. Many of the families that don't have computers have cell phones, and cell phones, most of them today are text ready. So I know we're looking at ways to do blast text messages to communicate certain things like early closings or something happened. The snow days would be a good example when school was closed here for the first time in a long, long time over weather, things like that. So we're addressing that in a lot of different ways, including just by direct mail. The educational issues, I think, are more complex and more difficult, but ETHS is an amazing institution. It has deep, deep resources. There are computers everywhere. There are learning labs by subject. There are study centers. There are computer access available all times during the day, before school, after school, for students, and many programs, as Jane mentioned, to allow that for parents as well.
Thank you, Mr. Metz. Mr. Rickus?
Thank you. I think whatever we do, one of the first things we have to clarify is how we're going to define success and measure that. And that's true for any initiative that we're taking on in our district. I completed my master's from the School of Education and Social Policy at Northwestern. And after that, spent 3 years working with schools, primarily in the Chicago Public Schools, to integrate technology into their curriculum. So this is an area that I'm very familiar with. I worked with one school, Stewart Elementary, for an entire school year. And a couple things we did worked very well. One was providing access to some of the school resources, as Ms. Bailey has mentioned, so that families could come in and get access. And the second was, and it really relates to career readiness, is making sure that we're giving the children skills. So it's not just about the access to the technology, but building their skills, because that's going to make them more marketable when they go out into the workplace to try and find a job. It's also been mentioned that partnering with outside organizations can be very successful. Some of those have been mentioned, and I think we absolutely should do that. Again, Northwestern is an organization that we could tap into in that regard. And finally, I would say we need to tap into organizations that we would bring into the school that would be sensitive to working with families that don't have access to technology. Teach for America is an organization that has highly motivated alumni who about 50% of them choose to stay in education. And they're used to dealing with circumstances that are actually typically far more difficult than the ones we have in Evanston. So they come prepared to deal with those challenges. And I think we really should make sure that we're bringing that type of talent into our district. It's not going to solve the issue of access, but it's going to prepare us better as a school district for how we deal with those children and those families who don't have access, and hopefully bring some new ideas into our district for how we can address it.
Thank you, Mr. Rickus. Mr. Rochelle?
Well, I'm going to break this down to two different issues as well. We talk about 30% of parents who do not have access to computers. As a school and as a board, we need to be proactive in reaching these parents. Our communication has been criticized, and it's going to continue to be criticized until something changes, until we get proactive about this. Evanston High School needs to reach out to these parents and say, look, we have these resources. Evanston is a high school town. We have a great university here, but Evanston is a high school town. Evanston Township High School is the center of this community. We need to act like it. The people in this community need to feel as if they're welcome at the high school. They're paying their taxes to the high school. Everyone in the community is a stakeholder. Whether the students, teachers, parents, everyone has an investment of some sort in the school. So we need to act that way. We need to welcome people in who do not have the resources into our wealth. And Mark said it, we've got a lot of resources at Evanston High School. It shouldn't just stop with the students. And that's the first thing I'll say. I'm halfway through, just like I'm on 1 minute mark. With communication being an issue, we talk a lot about speaking with the community and communicating with the community. Well, communication is two ways. Communication goes out, and communication comes in. And there are a lot of, and this is important because there are a lot of parents and people in the community that use the web and internet to communicate with each other and with the school. That 30%, they're not involved in that conversation. They're involved in PTSA listserv. So we really need to do that. And so one of the things I'd like to do is start more communication with listening, with giving all parents the opportunity to give their feedback and their input on what we're doing as a school. Because right now, that 30% is being very underserved because they're not being able to hear the things that we hear. To the two board members, they've heard a lot in the past year about what people's opinions are. I've heard a lot on the campaign trail. I think everyone should be involved in this conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Rochelle. I'd like to take this opportunity to put your hands together to thank the candidates. What an awesome discussion this morning. Last but not least, our host committee, the Education Committee of the NAACP, Terry Shepard, Chair, Judith Treadway, Susan Green, and our wonderful timekeeper, Lloyd Shepard. Mr. J.B. Reese is going to answer the last question.
Again, I agree that the main hurdle on the digital divide, I think, is first and foremost getting parents the information. And with the other technology, as Mr. Metz said, the text phones and things, that's a way to kind of get around information that's quick, or at least to let parents know that something is coming in the mail that is important. As far as on the academic side for the kids, as kids progress through school, the computer becomes more important for research, for writing papers. So there's a lot of steps that can be taken. The AYSO has a cleat swap, and I know there's a lot of families that have old computers, and we can always have once a year some type of computer swap where families that have given up some of their old computers, they're still in good working condition, can then put them out. We can have the tech people at the school take a look at them, make sure they're ready to go, and they can be used that way. So there's a lot of different ways, inexpensive ways to get this hardware out to families so that students can have this access and parents can have this access at home. Like Evanston has this Wildcat Academy, maybe we should begin to look at opening our schools on Saturday mornings to have kids come in to do homework, kids to have access to computer to do their work. Again, maybe a 1 or 2 nights a week, maybe we can extend hours to that to give kids access to this. But I also want something important. I think computers are, and the technology is undeniable how fast it's going and how it can open up different worlds of research and all the different things that you can do. But I still think that we have to emphasize that reading a book, pen to paper, pencil to paper, are still a skill that we still need to teach kids. As much as we want to get all admired with the computer and everything, those basic skills still need to be reinforced with our kids, especially at an early age.
Thank you very much. The next question is also for both set of candidates, for both District 202 and District 65. What do you think STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math project initiatives, and which ones do you believe will be the most effective? What do you think of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math project initiatives, and which ones do you believe will be effective? I did that twice because I don't see any lights. Going once, alrighty. Ms. Buddy.
Okay.
I'm not actually sure what initiatives we're talking about in 65. I know we have some schools that do science fairs. I think we need to expand that. I think it would be really cool to have a science fair that brought all the winners of their respective schools together and maybe hold it at ETHS. I feel passionately about this part of our curriculum because I am a math teacher and I've taught everything from 7th grade through BC Calculus, and I currently tutor students, so I see what's going on from 6th grade through BC Calculus because I have students that span that whole gamut. So I think that another thing, I think an initiative that we need to do in math is to work to close the gender gap. I don't know, I haven't seen numbers on our district how girls perform in math versus boys, but it's been a traditional problem. Girls' self-concept is not necessarily as strong as boys. When it comes to middle school math, girls tend to start quieting themselves and not being the ones who are most aggressive about problem solving and speaking out in class. So that's something I want to look into, how our district is doing, and work towards that. When I have taught classes, when I've had the good fortune to be in a school for 3 years at a time as a teacher, I've had the same group for 3 years in a row. I have been able to increase enrollment in AP Calculus class by girls every year I've done it. So it's a teacher expectation coupled with a parent expectation. Somehow you have to convince girls that they have the same raw material as boys do to succeed in math, and that they should push themselves to take the highest level math classes. So that's a personal passion of mine. But I think all the students need to be pushing themselves to take higher level math classes, and we need to do everything in 65 that we can do to make sure that all of our children are able to access the tough math classes at the high school, because we have an excellent math program and everybody should be able to take advantage of that to the fullest extent possible.
Thank you, Ms. Buddy. Mr. Terry, followed by Mr. Metz.
Okay. Oh, I forgot to turn the mic on. Well, STEMS is, in my opinion, a fantastic initiative. I'm a bacteriologist by undergraduate training, let me just tell you that. And I firmly believe in science. And so I think that science, technology, engineering, and math, there are initiatives that you can use to excite and ignite the educational experience with kids. And so in terms of initiatives, I think that we can partner with outside agencies such as Argonne National Labs. I am the executive director of the Chicago Innovation Mentors Organization, which is an educational initiative trying to partner scientists with business and move that forward. In terms of District 65, I can just tell you that we need to do more in all 4 of these areas. I have 60 seconds left. So with respect to math, I think we've done some good initiatives there, but we need to do a whole lot more. In terms of engineering, I don't think we've even really picked the ball up on this one. This is something that we can do significantly more on in terms of engineering experience. Technology is here to stay whether we realize it or not, and there are a number of different ways that we can move this forward. In science, being a scientific guy, I think that there are things that we can do, initiatives that we can do in the summer, as well as during the classroom, that ignites a child's educational and learning experience, that pulls them into the career and college readiness component. I just remember back, how many seconds do I have left? Okay. Okay. As a young child, I remember my science teacher lighting a match underneath me, and I went on to study biology. And so it did not happen until the teacher ignited that. And I just think there are a number of initiatives that we can do in District 65 as well.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. Mr. Metz, followed by Ms. Bailey.
I believe that all students are going to need good math skills, good understanding of science, good understanding of technology in their lives as they go forward. And it really doesn't, it's not restricted to those that will have careers in science and technology. Everybody's going to need those skills to get through the training at the next level. I think the day when our kids are going to be able to graduate from high school and go right into a middle-class job in manufacturing or something like that without any more education are largely gone. And our kids today, all of them, are going to need post-secondary education. And And our kids are going to need to be prepared to excel in that education, whatever it is, whether it's college or university, whether it's a job training program or a technical training program. Our job is to make them, put them in a place where they're going to be more successful and do better than their competitors, and therefore are going to get into those programs and land those jobs. That's one of the things that should be our goal. So everybody's going to need greater science and technology and math skills, to be sure. We do an awful lot, as you know, at ETHS around science and technology, and especially mathematics. We have, I've got a list here of student achievements that goes on page after page, but just a couple of things. We had a student that was recognized by President Obama for winning first place in the DuPont Challenge Science Essay Competition. We had our team won first place in the Worldwide Youth Sciences and Engineering Academic Challenge, the regional competition. In 2011. We had a student win the annual bridge building competition, which if any of you have ever seen the bridge building, it's one of the coolest things we do over there. But all students are going to need math. All students are going to need to do better. And these are even students that are more prone toward the humanities.
Thank you, Mr. Metz. Ms. Bailey?
As a parent of 4 children from elementary through high school, I've seen what we have done really well. And in this area, I'm going to talk about first what we've done and also where we can do to increase our presence in both science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But I think we also need to appreciate what, as Mark said, all the things that we're doing well. I mean, those kids are coming from District 65. And sometimes we think, oh, we got to keep improving and keep improving. And I agree with that, but we're doing some really great things. I just started thinking about them. Of course, the PTAs do some great things with science fairs, but our schools do Science Olympiad, Math Olympiad. Project Excite is an amazing project that works with Northwestern students, Northwestern and ETHS and our kids to expose them to more. Math. We talk about math. I do want everybody to understand 15% of our kids are on track to take calculus in 11th grade. I mean, that's great. That's something we should be thrilled with. Technology, what we're able to do with technology. I attended a summer school project a year ago last summer where we were looking at the canal, and kids were actually measuring the amount of pollution and doing an analysis of what was in the canal. I mean, they're really exciting things. So how can we continue to increase this? Oh, and the other thing we've done is made sure that middle school students have to pass science to graduate. I mean, we've made changes. That these are really, seems obvious, but these are changes we've made. But how can we continue to increase and improve this? Partnering with community organizations. I'm sure a lot of you hear about, what's the science university that happens that our kids go to for extra credit, but can we do more there? I want to make sure that all schools have these enrichment activities, not just one school doing Math Olympiad or Science Olympiad, but that all schools have that type of access. And I also want to measure, and I think this could be a common goal.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Ms. Colleton, followed by Mr. Rickus, and then Mr. Bond.
Thank you. I'm glad I hesitated before starting my answer to this question because it gave me time to think about all the myriad courses that we have at Evanston that are related to science and technology. The program planning handbook has 5 pages in the technology department of courses that kids can take that are related to their futures. Programs that are the articulation between Oakton Community Colleges, give college credit, and then start them on a career path. But I don't want to talk about career paths so much as I'm thinking about beyond our humanities efforts to next year we're going to be looking at biology in the freshman year. Now, we haven't gotten anything on this, but I'm thinking that as the board has not begun to read reports from the biology department, but I know they're working on it, and they're working on making biology available on a rigorous level for incoming freshmen. What a great start for science. And if we can increase the rigor in biology and use all the things that we're learning this year about humanities to apply to biology, I think we're going to be off to a great start. It's just a plug for that program.
Thank you, Ms. Colleton. Mr. Rickus?
Thank you. So what's interesting is you think about those different areas is 3 of them are subject areas, and 1 of them is actually a tool, the technology. And so I think it's really important that our teachers are prepared, no matter what their subject area, to be able to integrate the technology into what they're teaching. And we really need to make sure our teachers have the professional development so that they're comfortable and masters at doing that. And because that's not necessarily an area of emphasis, it's something that some teachers do and others don't do as much. And we need to make sure there's more consistency within the classroom, not necessarily outside initiatives. I think if we start there, we'll see a lot of positive impact. No Child Left Behind has had us focus a lot on reading and math. And I think one of the things we need to make sure we're doing, in particular with math, is having subject matter experts teaching those courses in our classrooms. I've heard from many parents that there are challenges with the expertise of some of the teachers in our classrooms. I don't know what the causes are of that, but I think we just need to start there and make sure, again, in the classroom, we have adequate expertise teaching people in these areas. In terms of science, I always enjoy hearing our son, who's in kindergarten at Dawes, talk about what he's doing. And recently he came home and dipped a Kleenex into some water and promptly put it into the freezer. And I looked at him and I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Dad, I'm doing science." And that sort of excitement around science, I think, is something that, again, we can generate in our schools and through lots of the initiatives that have already been referenced. And so I think it's really important that we do make it fun, and that as parents, the piece that we can do is to encourage their interest and excitement and follow their lead when they do demonstrate an interest.
Thank you, Mr. Rickus. Mr. Baum, followed by Mr. Rochelle.
Well, I'm going to be a little contrarian. Surprise, surprise. I know that science and math is the hot thing, and it's all about competitiveness, and President Obama pushes it and all that. But my observation as a parent in District 65 and 202, and between the 2 of them, is that I actually think that the humanities are kind of the stepchild of the curriculum versus science and math. I think, Mark referred to the list of the awards that kids get in math and science, and where are the comparable opportunities to be a humanities star that there are to be a math and a science star? Frankly, it flows from District 65 to 202. One of the reasons that parents clamor for the 8th grade and the honors geometry program is because it's the only acceleration opportunity that's available. And so what I would like to see the 2 districts work together on is to provide comparable acceleration opportunities in humanities to those that they provide in math, so that you could begin in middle school that process. When Dr. Witherspoon last year was talking about the difference between math and humanities and why the proposed change for humanities wasn't being made for math, he said it was because math has a tightly sequenced curriculum that begins in middle school. Well, I'd like to see the same thing, the same tightly sequenced curriculum that begins in middle school and culminates in great success at ETHS with the humanities.
Thank you, Mr. Baum. Mr. Rochelle.
Before I start, I have to agree with Jonathan. I was an English major. I've always struggled with math. I've never really enjoyed math. And I'll get into the importance of math in a minute, but I do. Through undergrad, through grad school, and through law school, I've tutored students, even at the University of Illinois, who just didn't have basic humanities skills. It broke my heart. One student couldn't put a good paragraph together. He didn't understand those things. So I'll start by saying I agree with him, because communication, regardless of what you do, is going to be integral to whatever you do in life. If you cannot communicate, if you cannot write, if you can't speak, if you can't do those basic things, then you're going to be in trouble. So that part done. Science and technology and math are integral to Career Pathways program we have at Evanston High School. And Evanston High School is charged with educating every student, and I truly hope Evanston High School wants to prepare every student for college. I truly hope that, because we should prepare every student for college. But the truth of the matter is, not every student is going to graduate from college. Not every student who goes to college is going to stay there for 4 years. every student who graduates Evanston is going to go to college. One thing as a high school we have to be able to do is prepare every student for a life of independence where they can support themselves. And right now I think Evanston's doing a fantastic job. They need to promote their pathways to careers. You know, we have a pharmacy tech training program. We have a certified nursing program we're starting students in. The auto shop is now partnered with some national agencies to get these things going. You know, when we talk about math, science, technology, we can put it to use for our students to give them the best shot at a good quality life. If it's not college, so be it. You know, if every student needs to be able to support themselves and give themselves the best shot at having well, it's time to stop, but the best shot at supporting themselves and having a viable life.
Thank you, Mr. Rochelle. Again, this is for everyone. Beginning in 2012, both school districts are projecting budget deficits in the millions of dollars for the next several years. Where would you start tightening the belt without impacting instructional initiatives? Mr. Metz?
Thank you. Well, it's no secret that we're facing a difficult immediate future with respect to the budget. I do want to point out that ETHS has had a balanced budget for 4 straight years, and that we have won multiple awards for both audit and budget procedures. So our record keeping is very strong. Our thoughtfulness is deep, and we're, I think, doing a real good job with it. We also have a AAA bond rating from Moody's Investor Services, and that makes us one of only 10 school districts in the state of Illinois that are AAA rated. We need to make cuts. Next year we plan to make cuts totaling approximately $1.5 million for fiscal 2011-12. The plan at this point mostly is to come from an early retirement incentive package we're contemplating for IMRF, that's the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund employees that are covered by that fund. We think we can cause attrition without actually having a reduction in force, a forced reduction in force through that program, and that's going to provide a great deal of the cuts we need. Now, in addition to that, we're going to have to cut administration. Interesting to note that we have cut at least one administrator per year for 6 consecutive years, and we'll continue to make those cuts to keep the cuts away from the classroom. And we'll make additional cuts for materials and supplies to get us to that $1.5 million figure. Now, we may have to make additional cuts for the 2012-13 year, and much of that, of course, depends on the state of Illinois and the level of funding that they're able to provide. I do want to point out that we're doing an awful lot to save money. Cooperation with purchasing with D65. There's the Park School joint project. There's lunches that we provide that are benefit both school districts. We have a joint line of credit that we've negotiated under very good terms. And I have to stop, but there's a long list more.
Thank you, Mr. Metz. Mr. Baum, followed by Mr. Terry.
Well, I hope that we can keep cuts away from the classroom. I don't think anybody can honestly promise that, given the difficult times that we are in. I've been through this budget cutting process before when I was on the District 65 board. And what makes it so painful is that you don't get to choose between the good and the bad. You have to choose between the good and the good. They're all things that you want to do if you had enough money. And so what I think you have to focus on is not so much the nature or the title of the program, but rigorously evaluating for every program and every position, do they give us the maximum bang for the buck? And so it isn't just, you can't just look at, is this a good thing to be doing? Because it probably is. Almost everything we do is a good thing. But are we doing it as well and as efficiently as we can? And the most recent example that I saw was a report that came to the 202 board about our programs for struggling readers. Well, obviously that's an important thing to be doing. But in this report it said that one of the programs that we had for 3 years in a row, the students had done, the percentage of students meeting the expectations of the program had declined, and the percentage of the students who were what they called experiencing negative growth had actually increased to over 30%. And I was surprised when I got to the end of the report to say that the conclusion didn't say, well, maybe we have to try something else. But that's the kind of rigorous analysis that I think you have to give to every program if we're going to spend our money as wisely as we can.
Thank you, Mr. Baum. Mr. Terry.
Yeah, thank you. Let me just start by kind of echoing what Mr. Metz talked about, which was some of the financial integrity happening on District 65 side. we've had 8 years of a balanced budget. We've won awards as well. I have a lot of faith in the financial acumen of the staff on the District 65 side. With that said, we did experience kind of a hiccup. Well, no, not a terrible explosion on the financial budget this last year, and we were able to withstand that and put ourselves in pretty good shape. If we're going to cut, I would say we should try to stay as far away from the classroom as possible. Now, I can tell you there are some things that we're doing on the District 65 side that are important. We should look at every dollar spent. We have a $100 million budget. 83% of that is staff salary and benefits. So that doesn't leave a large portion for us to go after. However, knowing that the context of that, if we have to touch staff, that means we are going to have larger class sizes. And so I think that we need to do some things such as, looking at how do we collaborate more with District 202 to increase volume purchases beyond just food, which is where we collaborate now. Perhaps it's paper or other kinds of initiatives. So I would say that we're putting in place some very nice financial reviews of looking at this. But I would say that probably what's lurking out there is something far more sinister than any of us expect. Because when the budget blow-up happens with the state, it has a significant impact on the budget here. And $1 million impact, I think, is probably tough for us to avoid the teacher impact. So with that said, 2012 is right when we're going to go into a contract and negotiation with the teachers. And so, we are in not a pickle, but it means that we're going to have to work with the union. We're going to have to work with everyone in order to do what's proper. So with that said, I think we can do it, but it's going to be a tough one.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. Mr. Rickes.
Thank you. I think process is going to be really key, and I think that means we have to get input from all of our employees, not just teachers, but food service workers, from custodial staff, etc., when the time is right. I think especially, though, parents need to have some voice in this process. A part of that process will be the renegotiation of the union contracts that are going to be coming up, due, I think, in June of 2012. And the last negotiation was a little bit contentious, and I think we can improve upon that. And a way we can do that is to start the conversation with the unions earlier on, so that it is a several-month conversation and dialogue to try and be really clear about, when we sit down in that negotiating room, where we already are, and that we're pretty clear about what the outcome is going to be, because that is going to have a significant impact on the state of our budget. If you look at the administrative costs for our district, the last numbers that I saw showed our district about 4 to 5% higher than the state average. And if you look at our budget, which is just around $100 million, if you shave 4 to 5% off of that, that's $4 to $5 million. So to me, there's probably a lot of opportunity in administrative costs. We just have to be really rigorous about looking at that, both administrative and operationally. Third, in terms of programs that might get close to the classroom, the way we need to manage any choices is based on program success. And we need to start that process now by gathering evaluation information on the outcomes that our programs are producing. And when we go to look at those and make those difficult choices, we have to choose not by how much parents like it or how long it's been around, but which ones are producing the best outcomes for our children, and keep those.
Thank you, Mr. Rickes. Ms. Buddy, followed by Ms. Bailey, and then Ms. Colleton.
Ditto on the keeping the cuts away from the classroom and the discipline process, so I don't need to repeat that. Some other small things I've noticed, I think we have made progress, but I've noticed a reduction in mailing letters home to parents that weren't crucial. So little things like that I think we can go after. I don't know if we found or rooted out all the little wastes that we have, but I think we can reduce costs in a green fashion through being really careful about things like mailings. I also question whether now this is a done deal because they're already in the classroom, but if we go to buy expensive technology like we did when we bought the Promethean boards, Are they all being used? Are we going to have the training so the teachers are actually using those things? Because I know when I was in a school and we introduced those, they were in the thousands each per classroom. So I know some of us were trained in that school and we used them and others weren't. So it was a huge cost to our school that was not really justified, because if things just taking up space in the front of the room, we're not getting our money's worth. I agree with Mr. Rickus that we need to work on an ongoing basis with the teachers, because they're really the ones that know, for example, if a Promethean board was proposed, they know whether they're going to take advantage of that. So we need to make it a collaborative process. We're all in this together. How are we going to solve our budget problems? And we need to have a conversation that goes for months, not just for a few days before the contract negotiations happen.
Thank you, Ms. Buddy, Ms. Bailey, Ms. Colleton, and Mr. Rochelle. Ms. Bailey.
Okay. As chair of the Finance Committee, I want to say that I think both districts have been very disciplined about this issue. You can look at districts farther north, one that's having a referendum right now for an operating budget because they've been running deficits. We've been very disciplined about this. Now that said, next year, fiscal year 12, which is 2011-2012, right now we look okay, but it is so dependent on state aid. And just want to give you an example. If there's one state categorical payment that we don't receive, we'd be looking at $1 million deficit. So we have to continue to look at this now for even next year. And then, but in terms of 2012, 2013, what we have done is we're planning to start in May of next year, May of this year, to start what we did last year, which is looking at where we have rooms to make what are undesirable cuts. There's nothing good about any of this. You'll hear sometimes in the press, you'll hear that, ooh, there's a $30 million deficit looming, but that's not exactly right, because what we have, which is scary, is a $5 million deficit looming, and then a $6 million deficit after that. And then after that, I think there's a $7 million. But if we can address the $5 million deficit, it brings all future deficits down. And how do we go about addressing that $5 million deficit when 83% is salary and benefits of your budget? And we've looked at it. There may be little savings, but you've got to look at salary and benefits. And when you look at salary and benefits, yes, you can look at administration. I do want to note that sometimes our administration costs are a little bit higher because we have 17 buildings, and we have administrators in each of the buildings. So we need to look at that. But because we have so many buildings, and we have principals and assistant principals, it does increase our numbers. But we need to look at administration. We need to look at support services. We want to keep it as far out of the classroom as possible. You know, we have looked at things, if you increase your class size by 3, which impacts achievement, that eliminates the deficit, but we're going to have to work with all our unions starting in 2012.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Ms. Colleton, followed by Mr. Rochelle.
Thank you. Our community expects good fiscal stewardship at Evanston Township High School, and I think we get that in a great CFO at Bill Stafford. He produces a budget that's actually easy to read. I recommend it. We balanced our budget for 4 years, as Mark said, with our AAA bond rating. And we all realize that our budget is critical to our ability to deliver good teaching. It's absolutely essential. The tentative 2012 budget will require cuts to stay balanced. That's absolutely clear. I blame the state for a lot of this, but we still have to deal with what we've got. So we're asking teachers and staff to anticipate what we can do to make cuts. And we are also anticipating conversations with the community, which I think would be fabulous if people could help us figure out what to cut and what not to cut. But I, again, say the state is $7 to $8 billion in deficit. And if they paid us what we're supposed to be paid, we wouldn't have to be doing this. So I don't know, talk to your senators.
Thank you, Ms. Colleton. Mr. Rochelle.
I'll be brief. I agree with much of what's been said about streamlining our programs. We need to make data-based decisions, not data-driven decisions, but data-based decisions on what's working, what isn't working, what are we pouring resources at, and we're not getting results from, we're not getting anything back from. So we need to mine the data to make a data-based decision. You know, we mentioned the teacher contracts and negotiating. I've been at the negotiating table before. I've handled collective bargaining. A little background on myself, I'm actually an attorney that represents school boards and municipalities, and I've been through this process. And the one thing that's always worked, when nothing else has worked, is transparency. And I'll give you an analogy right now. The NFL is right now in a lockout over one thing. The management has not opened their books to the workers. At Evanston, we can open our books. We can't pay what we don't have. If we're transparent and very clear about what we do not have, we can't. There's going to be no lengthy negotiation about more for the teachers because we just don't have it. No one has it. No one in the state has it. So I think, number one, I'm going to advocate for transparency in that negotiation if I'm elected to the board. And the last thing is, we talk about cuts away from the classroom. I'm a 1999 graduate of Evanston High School. I believe in preserving the student experience. And I say that, and when we make our cuts, our student experience is second to none. And when you talk about things like the arts, people want to cut the arts. When you think about it, the arts has a real strong correlation to student achievement. At the end of the day, we're here for students. We're here for our students to achieve. So let's keep that in mind. I don't hear it enough, but so I want to say more about it. Student achievement is our goal. So our cuts need to balance a lot of things in there, but the student experience has a direct correlation to student achievement, and I want to preserve that because I love Evanston High School.
Thank you, Mr. Rochelle. Mr. Rees.
As far as trying to keep our fiscal responsibility for District 65, in September of this year, or September 2010, the four-year projections were, I think, somewhere around $8.4 million. That the 2012 and 2013, I'm kind of giving some rough estimates, around $2 or $3 million. I think they were looking at a projected deficit. That same year, the 2012 and 2013 deficit, I think, is $5.7 million. So in about about 5 months or so, that has doubled in those projections. So we really don't know in the next 4 or 5 months or the next year where those projections may be. And again, that goes toward the state. And our budget is a moving target, and it's going to be tough to balance. So if we don't balance by 2012-13, say we're $2 or $3 million short, that next year, which is I think over $6 million, goes up to $9 million or $10 million, and this can cascade pretty quickly. So I've advocated for getting these kind of citizen seminars. I guess the city council had tried that, where they brought in people from the community on Saturdays, got out the whiteboard and threw out ideas. I think there's some collective, to gather the collective knowledge of our community on ways to find some cost savings. I think is a first start that we can do. I'm not sure where all the cuts can be made, but I think we can get together these people to define that. But as you know, 83% of the budget comes in wages and benefits. And I do not know how we can get to a balanced budget by negotiating with the union that they're going to have to help out with this if we want to do it. And that's going to be tough. The teachers' unions received pay raises their last increase. And if it was contentious then, I'm not sure what's going to happen in 2012. Now, District 303 in St. Charles signed a 2-year contract with their teachers to balance the budget, but it required the teachers to take a pay freeze. I'm not sure if that's going to fly here. But this is the situation I think is brewing. I have, and that's what I'm cautioning everybody out.
Thank you, Mr. Rees. Just wanted to remind you again that early voting is available in the building today and next Saturday during the week, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, both here at the Morton Civic Center as well as for our Skokie audience at the Skokie Village Hall. When we started this morning, the instructions included at the reception table. You were able to fill out a white card if you had a question. I think we have time, Madam Chair, for one question. Terry Shepard, the chair of the Education Committee, has selected the questions. I have the cards here. So the one question that we'll take this morning, folks, is from someone in our audience. And I am losing my house because of the stunning increase in property taxes. So are a number of other Evanston families I know. We are real people. In the last 4 years, the salary of a typical Evanston teacher has gone up 21.5%. How will you control costs? Lights, please. I think it's salaries. Salaries, costs.
First thing is get the schools off.
Mr. Jerry?
You know, I'm going to speak from my heart on this one. You know, over the last few years, the economy has been, I would use a 4-letter word, but I can't. Really, really bad. And, you know, I can just tell you that as a board member, as president of the board, you know, my heart goes out to every citizen who's having financial difficulty. And one of the things that I'm sensitive on is ensuring that fairness happens in spite of the financial difficulties that happen in this world. There's inequity everywhere. And so I can just tell you that, you know, hindsight being 20/20, it's unfair to look at the teacher situation and say that they're the cause of it. I can tell you that if you look at the teachers' increase, it was not 21.5%. It was 3%.
Mike, please.
I was just going to bring that up, that didn't sound accurate, but teachers are, a lot of them live in Evanston and are taxpayers too, so they have the same interest as a lot of us. So I think the ongoing conversation with the teachers that needs to be months processed before the negotiations happen, I think we just need to appeal to everyone's common interest. None of us wants our taxes to get so onerous that people are leaving the district. If people leave the district, we won't have as much money because we get some money from the federal government and the state government per capita, depending on the number of students we have. So I think we need to work collaboratively. We need to ask the teachers early to start brainstorming along with us about how we're going to solve this problem together.
Thank you, Mr. Rochelle, followed by Mr. Baum.
This is a continuation of my last comment, where we're in a state where money is short, so we're going to have transparency with our negotiation with the teachers. When it comes to the rising cost of salaries, again, we need to be very clear and honest with these professionals in our building as to what we have, what we don't have, what things we need to control. If we're honest and if we are clear with them as to what our cash flow is and the fact that we are, and I want to say probably $1 million behind in state funding right now, these two can help me, they're going to have to make some concessions. Again, we can start the conversation early, but we have to force this issue of what we do not have. We have to make it very clear. We can leave no doubt about whether or not we're hiding the ball. It is what it is, and we have to be able to communicate that properly. Communication is going to be key in all of this.
Thank you, Mr. Rochelle. Mr. Baum.
I think we have to make two promises to the person who wrote this question. One is that we will not waste your money, and the other is that we will all join in the sacrifice. And that's about all that we can do. And when it comes to teachers, I think it's important that, teachers shouldn't be treated better than other people, but they shouldn't be treated worse than other people either. And especially people who are doing as crucial a professional job with our children as they are. So I just think that's sort of the framework we have to look at things in.
Thank you, Mr. Baum. Mr. Rickus?
My heart does go out to the people in need. I have a job, and I feel lucky, and I know that a lot of people are really down on their luck, and it's not something that I take for granted to have a job. And as public servants, we do have to be good financial stewards of the money that the taxpayers give us. I think we need to be extremely transparent, make sure that all of the financial details are posted online on a timely basis. We need to make our choices based on data. When we talk about anything related to teachers, it's not just teachers, it is all employees. And that is what I have heard. They really feel like they just want to be treated fairly. And so I think if they understand our situation, they will respond fairly. Oakton Community College does it really well. They negotiate from starting with the book and getting to yes, and they focus on what the shared interests are, not positions. If we do that, we can get there together.
Thank you, Mr. Rickus. Ms. Colleton, followed by Mr. Rees.
Thanks. In the negotiation process, which is coming up soon, I think our ongoing relationship with teachers is of great benefit because we are a cooperative institution, and I think teachers are going to come to the table knowing that sacrifice is necessary. You've been living fat for a while, and I think in many people's minds, there's an expectation that it's going to continue, but the ugly truth is it's not. And now it's a time for serious belt tightening, unfortunately, and we're just going to have to get through this period by not wasting anything. And my brother's house is in foreclosure, so I know what that's about. It's very, very, very difficult.
Thank you, Ms. Colleton. Mr. Rees, followed by Ms. Bailey, and then Mr. Metz.
Yeah, what I hear is, unfortunately, with hearing more about it here in Evanston, the census has shown that the lower of the population here in Evanston has been hit, or has been shown to be in the lower income neighborhoods, and that's where most of the people are leaving Evanston from, and a lot of it has to do with the financial situation that we're faced with. I've been through 3 labor negotiations. I've worked in the family printing business, and we've owned the family business for over 40 years, and we've had 2 or 3 different generations go through that printing press. We've been to weddings and funerals and announced births. It's been a great experience. But all that, unfortunately, sometimes gets set aside when you sit down at the negotiating table for a union. Certainly I want cooperation, collaboration, and all those things. But we're faced with a real budget crisis. And all of us who are not in the private sector do have faced this belt tightening. I'm afraid that's going to happen as well.
Thank you, Mr. Rees. Ms. Bailey, followed by Mr. Metz.
District 65 is the largest portion of your property tax bill. And I think we are called to be good financial stewards. It's why you're electing us, and we need to do our due diligence. That said, the economy is tough. It's tough on everybody, and I think a lot of us have spoken from our heart here. It impacts taxpayers. It impacts families. It impacts students. It impacts our employees, not just our teachers, but we have a lot of employees here. Always remember that we serve the students, but we're also a community organization. That said, when we get to the point, and we are getting there to this negotiations and these with all our unions, the key is going to be collaboration. Collaboration with our employees, collaboration with our families, and collaboration with the taxpayers.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Mr. Metz.
My heart certainly goes out to anyone. My heart goes out to anyone losing their home for lack of ability to pay taxes. It's a horrible thing for any family to have to go through. To think that we're going to correct our tax situation on the backs of teachers is both a disservice and unfairly villainizes teachers, but it's also a disservice to our community. Our teachers ought to be heroes. We ought to hold them up as heroes. We ought to move toward a system where teachers earn enough and are highly respected enough as a profession, where we're creating great competition among our very best and our brightest to become teachers, because it's one of the most important things we do in our society. It touches everything and everybody in our society. That said, time for reality check. I mean, we don't have the money to afford big pay raises for teachers. And I think our teachers know that. We are blessed at ETHS with a great relationship with TRS, and I'm sure we'll get through this.
Thank you, Mr. Metz. And on behalf of this esteemed panel, I'd like to thank you. I'm Karen Chavers. I'd like to thank you again for the opportunity to moderate this wonderful panel. I give you the Education Chair, Terry Shepard.
And I'll just piggyback on what Ms. Shavers is saying. We'd like to thank you all for participating in our 5th annual NAACP Candidate Forum, and we look forward to seeing you all and maybe some of you returning in 2012. Thank you.